How are you? I'm going to switch to my slide share. So you won't be able to see my face, but that's no big sacrifice. The energy and the creative power and the talent of everybody that I met there. I want to continue to stay engaged and do everything I can to encourage and to help the creative community in Almaty and throughout Kazakhstan, particularly when it comes to becoming successful with video games. So I'm going to go over, it is in fact a lot of this similar content that I presented last year. I'm hoping this is a somewhat different audience, but I've added some new information because the world does keep changing. So a little bit more about me. I have worked in video games for about 30 years. I worked at a number of companies, big and small, including both Microsoft and Amazon, and a number of other video game companies. And I've been really lucky to work on some of the most famous and most wonderful video games in the world, from old classics like Pac-Man and Sonic the Hedgehog to most recently Fortnite. Uh, I think it's important to make everybody understand, though, that I'm not the creative person. I'm not the person with the ideas, and I'm not the person with the technical skills. I work on the business side. So in games, mostly you can say you work in development or you work in publishing. I work in publishing, and publishing is everything that's not development. So running the P&L statement, managing the sales forecasts, marketing, business models, PR, all of that kind of falls under the publishing umbrella. I started out my career in Japan. So if you have questions in Japanese, I welcome that as well. And I worked across Japan, the United States, and also I worked in Europe. The last few years, I've really shifted my focus and become much more independent. So I am a part-time professor in the interactive media department at University of Southern California. We have two sister programs at this university. One is in the computer science department that's very focused on the technology and programming engineering. And another is in the film school. And we very much focus on the creative design side. Because the way that games work today, there are a lot of specialized roles. Not everybody has to be creative. Not everybody has to be technical. And I continue to work as an advisor, as a board member, and very engaged throughout the world in video games. Now, my guess is I'm speaking to a pretty young audience, and I expect most of you play video games. But a lot of the world still does not understand how big, how important, and how influential games are. And the first thing to understand is games are bigger than Hollywood. In 2008, the biggest game earned much more money than the biggest movie. And games collectively are much bigger than the movie business, both in the United States and around the world. Now, there are many more important ways to measure influence than just revenue, but it's a good measure. It's also a very global business. It's interesting to see that there's a good balance between East and West. So the Asia Pacific region is about half the business, and the Western markets are also about half the business. China, of course, is the fastest growing, and this chart says the United States market is larger. I think the Chinese market is actually a little larger. And the problem is that there is no official measurement of any of these countries' size or many of these companies' size. These are all general estimates, but $150 billion a year is a fairly well accepted total. The business is also very well balanced when it comes to platforms. Mobile games are the largest and the fastest growing part of the business. They're almost half. But also, PC games and console games are still very big and very global. Console games are the least global. They're very much focused in North America and Europe. PC and mobile are very, very global in their focus. And I think it's also worth noting that almost all, I would say 75, 80% of the investment money is still going to mobile games. So what happened? As you can see here, the growth in the industry really started around 2007, 2008. And that's really when smartphones came on the market. I think that the smartphones started in 2007, 2008, and the App Store started 1 year later. So you saw, powerful feature phones definitely started to bring more gamers into the audience. But it was the introduction of the iPhone and Android phones that really grew the business. And it grew it in two ways. It grew the demographics. So you have both older and younger people playing games. There are now many video game companies that focus on people aged 50, 60, and older with slot machine games and social gambling games. And of course, many, many younger kids are playing games as well through experiences like Minecraft, Roblox, and so on. It's also changed in terms of region because new parts of the world, like a China and most recently India, have become, for the first time, really addressable and monetizable markets. In spite of being global, in spite of being bigger than Hollywood, in spite of being very influential to the young generation, games still don't get the respect that traditional entertainment media gets. If you look at making films and TV, what's the image? The image is cool, well-dressed people working together as a team and telling these stories that make people's dreams. What's the image of video games? It's a hacker in a basement working alone, or a bunch of nerdy boys on a sofa playing together. Now, neither of these images are really true. And what's interesting is when it comes to making movies and making games, we're making them the same way these days. We're using a lot of the same technology, right? Look at how Avengers was made. Look at how video games are made. Green screens, CG technology, motion capture, very similar processes. And certainly here in Los Angeles, where I live, a lot of the talent move back and forth between working in movie studios and working in game studios. Some of the technology now is being developed in games and then going to movies, especially motion capture and facial capture. There's also really important, it's very important to understand the influence on culture. Certainly, America traditionally has used the power of Hollywood to shape its image around the world. And we've had two world leaders, Ronald Reagan in film and Donald Trump in television, use their fame from Hollywood to become president of the United States. But what was more interesting to me recently was watching that at the end of the Rio de Janeiro Olympics, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe dressed up in cosplay. He dressed up as Super Mario to welcome people Japan to Tokyo for the next Olympics. Well, why did he do that? Because the image that people have today of Japan is really shaped by video games. Certainly also by manga and anime. But Japan at the previous century, their image was shaped by World War II and imperialism, and then in aggressive industrial policy of Japan Incorporated. But now people have a softer image, a more favorable image, a more positive image because of games. So games are not only a great economy and not only a great culture, it's also very much its own soft power. And games are also being democratized in how they're built around the world. Look at all of these countries, right? Other than Russia, none of them are really large countries in terms of population or GDP, but they're making incredibly powerful, influential games that are touching and connecting people around the world. Poland, in particular, with CD Projekt Red. The Witcher is probably one of the most successful games of the last decade. And their next game, hopefully coming out this year, Cyberpunk 2077, absolutely going to be the #1 game of the year. Or look at Finland. Finland only has a population of 5 million people, right? I think Kazakhstan is like 18 million. So much smaller even than Kazakhstan. That one country, at least in 2017, was responsible for 5% of all revenue on the App Store because of the power of games like um, Angry Birds, Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and so on. An incredible powerhouse for that economy. Now, when I look at the countries that are really over delivering on their games revenue versus their GDP or the population, I see two trends. You definitely see countries that come out of the former Soviet region, which I place in part to the strong emphasis on mathematics, engineering, and science. And I think you also see a lot of countries from northern latitudes and very cold climates because, quite frankly, people stay inside during the winter months and they have a lot more time to play video games. So if I look at those two trends and I think about like where they overlap as a Venn diagram, where do you sort of combine that former Soviet educational focus with cold cold weather and long winters? It's Kazakhstan, and so it's no surprise to me that there already are some really talented and also very successful small indie developers coming out of Kazakhstan. Right, my favorite is Katata Games, who last year released a Top Run, a really cool sort of retro 80s side scroller. And the game was awarded Apple's Game of the Day, which, I think for mobile games, this is probably the most important recognition that you can get. There are more than 500 apps submitted every single day to the App Store. I think there are, at this point, about at least 1 million apps on the store in general. So to get that kind of recognition is fantastic. This game is now also out on PlayStation. Of course, it's out on Android. And I'd really encourage everyone who's watching this stream, download the game. It's free. Give it a play. Give it a 5-star rating, and support a great local developer. This is a husband and wife team. Their cat is the CEO, and I'm really expecting more great things from them. But they're not the only one. I love this game, Car Parking Simulator. Yeah, it sounds crazy, right? A game about parking your car, but it's a really good game. It's been very successful, and it's now grown. It's about much more than just parking cars, and a lot of other studios have tried to copy this same car parking experience, but nobody's done it so well. You look at the ratings on the side there, right? 70% 5-star ratings. So again, support your local developer, right? Give them a download, give them a good rating, play the game, and tell your friends, because a great developer needs all the support they can get. It's not just about revenue. It's about playing the game, telling your friends, sharing the word on social media. Another great game, the MADOUT series for PC and mobile. Several games in this series, lots of fun, crazy driving, crazy action, homemade in Kazakhstan. And I'm sure you all know how successful Kazakhstan is in eSports. My joke is they may change the name of the country to Dotastan, because when it comes to games like Dota and CS:GO, the talent is incredible. Yeah, of course the top players are really strong, but the esports culture runs everywhere in the net cafes and lots of pro teams. There are star players on Russian teams. Even FaZe Clan here in Los Angeles had a Kazakh player, and a really superstar world-leading teams in terms of revenue and world ranking. I think it's great that Kazakhstan has a very game-centric culture, and I love that there are champions playing these games. But it's not enough just to play the games. I really would encourage, and hope everyone can start making more games and supporting those games too. The question is how? How can you get started in this? The good news is every day it gets easier. When I started in this industry, it was really hard. You needed to have studied computer science, probably in university. You needed to have a large team because you're making everything from zero. You had to spend a lot of money on marketing, right? For me, as Square Enix, to distribute a game at retail, I needed a commitment of at least $5 million in advertising in order for the major retail stores to even consider taking the product. And you needed a global sales force. You needed to manufacture product, have inventory, distribute it, collect the revenue. None of this is necessary anymore. You can use engines like Unreal or Unity, so a small team can develop a very high quality game. You use social media. You can develop a successful social media campaign with $0. But even if you're just spending a small budget, you can do a lot. And of course, you don't need a sales force. Put the game on the Apple Store or Google Play. Put it on Steam or the Epic Games Store or any number of digital outlets, and you can start collecting money the next month. And it's even getting easier than this. There's a fantastic new trend that's happening with these platforms that come with their own tool set for building games. A lot of people compare it to playing with Legos. So Roblox and a Core is from a company called Manticore, but the platform is called Core. They have pre-made art, pre-made physics, and pre-made animations and more. So all you have to do is grab and mix the different components from their platform, use your own original ideas to make a brand new game with the parts already pre-built for you. Then you publish it on that platform and start earning revenue right away. So what this means is if you're a creative person, but you don't have any technical background, or you're just working alone, you don't have a team behind you, you can use these tools and start making your own games now. Of course, it's always easier with more technical people. It's always better with a team, but you can get started on your own. Use these tools to show your ideas and your talent, then you can build from there and reach a global market on day one and continue to use social media to spread the word. So you can do it completely on your own. You can do it with a middleware tool set, or you can build it on these custom-made platforms. It just depends on your own talent and resources. If you're not familiar with Roblox, please check it out. Roblox already has 100 million monthly average users. Core is a brand new company. It's still in alpha. It's still a startup. It's built on Unreal Engine. It's a very, very powerful tool set that's very easy to use. I just watched a video where somebody built a complete game using these Core tools while I was watching in 30 minutes. So it's really that easy. In my own case, I was a co-founder of a studio with only 2 developers. So there was 3 of us, me and these 2 guys. They used Unreal Engine. They were a very talented, very experienced team. They used Unreal Engine and they made a complete VR game on their own. They used art that was already made and available in an art marketplace. They used Unreal Engine tools, so they didn't need to do programming. And they were animators by trade, so they did their own animation and their own game design. They built this game in a year. They put it on early access on the Steam store. We earned about $600,000 from that. The only thing that kept us from being even bigger was that we built it in VR. And the early VR platforms were not so successful. But new platforms are coming out. They're already growing. They're already getting bigger. They're cheaper and more powerful than before. So VR is still a very viable place to start building your own creative ideas. AR, again, it's getting off to a slow start with the dedicated headsets, but certainly Pokemon Go and Harry Potter using the AR capabilities of the iPhone have shown a lot of potential. And I think there's a lot more creative work that can be done. I've seen some at my university. And again, mobile will allow you to reach a audience of billions of users overnight. I'm most interested about the power of cloud gaming. Now, Google Stadia, not super successful yet, but more platforms are coming from Microsoft, from Amazon. I am a part of a company called Shadow that provides a cloud gaming experience in Europe and the United States. This, again, is the trend of democratization of video gaming power. Because the processing power is in a cloud data center, you can have a very low power device, a weak laptop or just a regular Android phone, and still play a high end, high spec PC game. This, again, will allow people in more countries around the world who don't have access to a gaming PC, who don't want to go to a PC cafe, to play the same high-powered games that are available in the rest of the world. And again, this allows you to make games, post them, make them available on the cloud, and not have to rely on other people's distribution networks to download and sell the game. So how do you do this? If you're, far from a major market, the good news is, the power of our connected world still will allow you to be as successful as somebody working in San Francisco, New York, London, or Tokyo. Some of the things that you should think about if you're a small independent developer is, first of all, whether you want to work with a larger publishing partner. In that case, the larger partner can help you reach a larger audience. They can market, they can give you more professional support, but they'll take a minimum 50% of your revenue. So there's plus and minus to that. A good approach can be to sell your game to a publisher to build your reputation, then make your next game more independently. But you can use other partners without selling your content, without giving up your rights. Platforms, stores, and tech companies are often willing to give you free support or sometimes even give you a grant to help you out. Epic Games, one of my former companies, is very generous when it comes to supporting new companies who put their games on the Epic Store. And I would encourage you to go to the local Kazakh offices of big tech companies, whether it's Intel, Microsoft, or anyone else. You might be surprised at their willingness to help out a small developer with equipment, technical support, or maybe even some small amount of cash. If nothing else, they might even pay for you to travel to some of their events around the world and showcase your game on their platforms. I've seen lots of great social media work coming out of Kazakhstan, so you don't need me to tell you how to use social media. But I will say, whether it's for social media or PR, you would be surprised how many doors you can open just by saying you're a game developer from Kazakhstan. Because to the rest of the world, a Kazakh developer sounds very exotic, very unique, very unusual. So you can get attention just from that. Crowdfunding is difficult to do for games, but there are crowdfunding platforms that you can reach out. Generally, for a game to be successful on crowdfunding, it has to be a cause. So if you're making a game with a unique social message or a unique mission, then it does a lot better than just a really fun game. This is not maybe a great time to talk about events, since a lot of events are being canceled. But again, companies like Intel, Google, Microsoft, they need partners with content to show how their platforms work. And certainly I've worked with very small indie developers who have their travel paid for and a showcase provided by big tech companies who simply want that developer to talk about how they use the technology, how they use the platform, and to help spread the word. And of course, support local esports. Go to esport events, give away stickers or posters of your game. This is our tribe. These are our people. Where we get together, there's a lot of love and a lot of support for ourselves. I think the video game community really is a global community. It's a global tribe. And, to be honest, Hollywood has not been kind to Kazakhstan. I think the video game world and the video game community is much more engaged, supportive, and positive. And I think it is a great way for the people of Kazakhstan to tell their story, their culture. The challenge that I face is when I talk to young people, the enthusiasm, the love for video games is everywhere. But when I talk to business people, when I talk to investors, when I talk to universities about starting game related programs, the old image of video games as a violent, antisocial, negative, it's still there. And we still face these issues even in the West, even in the United States. But year after year, less and less as games become more mainstream, in particular during these live at home and work from home times. People are spending more times on games and coming better to appreciate them. But if I can leave you with one last idea or thought, I want you to think big. There are great places for small games, but don't be afraid to be ambitious. Dream big. You have the ability, just like Fortnite, just like Roblox, to reach 100 million users or more around the world. When Notch was building Minecraft in Sweden, he did it all by himself, just one person. And he built up a large team after he launched it. But the game was really one person's vision, one person's dream. So that's all the presentation content I have. I'll pop back. Unfortunately, you have to look at my face again. And if any of you have any questions, or by the way, if you have any thoughts you want to share, any other developers you want to highlight, I'd welcome this opportunity to share that. I guarantee several, maybe many, maybe most of the people on this call today probably know more about games than me. It's a young man's media, and I'm not as good as I used to be at games. I play a lot of Rocket League, but I'm not a pro. So don't just open yourself up to questions. If you have any comments or thoughts or updates on anything I said, please feel free to share.
Mike, thank you very much. I know that there are a couple of developers joined. Guys, please speak up and share about your projects. Mirbek was writing to me and asking some questions. If you would like, you can ask in Russian, and as we said, we can translate. And I know Konstantin from Karaganda that I mentioned before, one of the game developers. So you're welcome, guys, to share your projects and ask questions. There is a comment from US Consulate Banu. She's saying awesome presentation. Thank you very much, Mike.
Even if folks don't have questions, if you're a developer, I definitely encourage you to reach out and contact me. Send me links to your games and your content. I'm always very happy to share that word. And if I see any opportunities to promote your content, I'm happy to do that. Oh, here we go. What is your favorite top 3 games of all time? So my current favorite game is definitely Rocket League. I'm a level 120 Rocketeer, which is the top level for time played. But in terms of skill, I'm not very good. I'm still bronze. My second favorite game is Genesis, Mickey Mouse game, if you can believe it. It was the very first game where I was able to put my name in the game. And it was published in maybe 1991. It's still a classic. It still does very good. And the developer is still a friend of mine. I'm not sure what I'd say what my third favorite game is. Probably Halo. My favorite indie game was definitely Monument Valley. Another one that I would encourage people to try is called Outer Wilds. Not to be confused with Outer Worlds, which is also good, but Outer Wilds was it's an indie game developed by a former USC student that was launched last year and very successful. And have I played the brand new Half-Life game, Alex? Well, I bought the game, but I haven't played the game. And the problem is I have a HTC Vive headset. Where's my Vive headset? I have my headset, but oh my God, it's such a nightmare to connect. So it's on my list of things to do. But I've been playing my Oculus Quest so much because it's such an easy system to use. It's light, it's not connected to my PC, and the games are simpler, but the games are more fun. I think that VR gaming is still going to grow and spread. I invested a lot of money in VR. I lost a lot of money in VR, but I still believe in it. Um, to invest too early is just as bad as investing too late, and I invested too early in much of it. But the games are so fun, and I think the value of VR is going to be connected VR. Some students of mine now are making a board game platform. So it's very easy just to play a simple dice game or a card game in VR with your friends. It feels like you're in the same room, even though you're not in the same room. So VR right now is still a very small market, but there are at least 100 games that have earned at least $1 million in sales in VR. So we're getting there. And I think the systems will be getting cheaper and lighter as time goes on. So here, if local Kazakhstan game dev companies need to contact overseas mobile game dev companies to get outsource work, what do we do? Thanks a lot. So this is somebody who's an app developer. I will tell you, outsourcing work in video games is really hard. There are so many talented teams looking for that kind of work for hire that the prices just get pushed down, 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 and down. Honestly, the best way to get work for hire as a game developer is first to develop your own game and put it out on the App Store. And even if the game itself is not a big seller, if I can see that you've made a game and I can see that the game is a quality, then when you reach out to me and say, Mike, I have a great development team, do you have someone who wants to use it? I can play your game and see your talent. But honestly speaking, I get emails almost every day from Russia, from China, from Japan. There are also now these days a lot of really talented teams in Latin America. And so that kind of work for hire at a global market is hard to do. That's for sure. Insights on how to promote small indie games on social networks. So it is better if you're making an indie game to make a game that a small audience is passionate about compared to just another game. Okay? For example, the world does not need right now another PvP shooter. There are so many great games out there in that space. But maybe you make a game about fish with lasers. It's not a good example, but or something that's a unique, different niche. The co-founders of Riot Games, the makers of League of Legends, they talk about black licorice. So black licorice is a very weird tasting candy. 95% of the people hate the taste of black licorice. I hate the taste of black licorice. But for the 5% of people who like it, they love it. They're passionate about it. They would walk a mile in the rain to buy it. Target that small 5% niche market. And then that small audience will be passionate about you. I think the other thing about social media is you don't have to pay influencers to talk about your game. if you can find the right influencer. So spend some time, watch these YouTubers, watch the Twitch streamers, find which ones you think like what you like. So if there's any kind of overlap in interest, reach out to them directly. Tell them you're from Kazakhstan. Believe me, a popular YouTuber would love the idea to say, I just was sent a game from Kazakhstan. Take a look at this. It's really good because it's so unique to us. It's so different from us. You may have to contact 10 influencers before one says yes, but don't stop. Watch them, get to know them, get to understand them, and send them a direct personal one-on-one message. And just keep doing it and keep doing it. Yes, if anyone wants to contact me, I think you can get my contact information through Go Viral. So if anyone from Go Viral, if you want to send my contact and my email one by one directly to anyone, don't put it on Facebook. But if anyone wants to contact you directly, I'm more than happy if you're a Kazakh developer to reach out and show me what you're doing, and I'd love to help however I can. And I'll take a look at the Mad Aliens team for sure. Yeah, for pre-made assets, definitely the asset stores are a great resource. In my dinosaur game, we custom made one dinosaur. All the other dinosaurs we bought on the store, all the trees, all of the grass, everything, and we just put them together. And it's really not expensive. The key is the ideas still have to be your own. I mean, if you just throw together assets and copy another game, you're not going to have any success. But the point is, these tools allow you to focus on the creative skill of your game, not just on the back end. Um, what do you think about MOBAs? Do those games have a future in your opinion? Have you played any MOBA like League, Dota, or so? Yes, I got to about level 20 on League of Legends, and it felt like work. And when I was at Epic Games, is interesting. When we were working at Epic Games, we had two projects. One was Fortnite, and Fortnite was like considered the B title. The A title, the higher priority, was a MOBA. The MOBA was called a Paragon, and they at the time that was everyone thought that was the higher priority, and so we studied deep, how MOBAs, not only like League of Legends and Dota did, but also games like Smite. And the fact of the matter is, these MOBAs like League of Legends and Dota are so good. They've kind of perfected their style. I think it's hard to make a new MOBA. You would have to do something radically different. And I think the auto chess genre, which is almost turning these high speed strategic video games into almost like a board game, is just amazing. It's a whole new genre. It didn't exist, a couple of years ago, and I think it's fantastic. And I think there is a lot of potential in that space to do something new. Yeah, now Paragon is dead, unlike Fortnite. I'll tell you though, Epic Games was almost out of cash. I mean, the Paragon was a failure. Fortnite was just doing okay. And the sales from Unreal Engine were not doing that great. But I tell you, the CEO of Epic Games has no fear at all. He didn't dial back. He didn't have layoffs. He kept pushing ahead. And through a combination of innovation and a copying, they came out with the magic formula, which was to make it into a battle royale. So someone is saying they're trying to mix auto chess and roguelike elements in our game. I think that's a great approach. They call it the mashup, right? You take two genres and mix them together to create a new hybrid genre. It's a great approach to take. I really encourage people to do that. Very interesting to see how that works. I just think that the one thing I would say is try not to compete with a very successful game. Like, I would not want to make a MOBA that competes against League of Legends. I would not want to make a shooting game that competes against Call of Duty. But this idea of mixing genres up is great. For example, I would love to see somebody mix the driving game genre with the battle royale genre. So imagine you have 100 cars in a city, and all the cars have guns on top. And you just drive around shooting the other cars until there's one car left. It's not a difficult game to make. You can take the physics from a driving game, add shooting, and then add the rule set from a battle royale like Fortnite and do it together. So I love the idea of mixing auto chess and a roguelike. One other advice that I would make is, cross out. See, somebody's already done it. One other thing that I will say is it's really important that you create a lot of visual assets for your games. That means creating character art, taking screenshots, and lots of video. Lots of video. It's very frustrating for me as a publisher, as a marketer, when I want to show people your game, but I don't have enough of the game assets to show. Developers never want to show the game until it's perfect, but you have to let go and let people see even an unfinished version of your game. I'm a big fan of what's called early access, where you sell the game before it's finished. People play an early version. They give you feedback on the game, and then you use that feedback to make it better. If you can make the community part of your game, they'll be happy to support you. The other thing you can do is hire influencers or even hire local Kazakh celebrities to be your voice actors. Just have them, at home, record some basic dialogue and language for you and put it in the game. If you do that with an influencer, it's a great way to get them to promote your product. If you do it with a local talent or a local celebrity, it's a great way to build interest in your own local market. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and in my experience, most people are very willing to help out a local developer. Hold on, I'm going to write down the name of Crossout. I think I have a new game I want to play. Crossout.
There is a one
Fantastic.
question also came privately from a person, Aldiarova. Hi, Aldiarova. Don't you think that games should become more a constructor for everyone? I don't know.
I'll say yes and no. I mean, there is an image of games as being sort of, violent and maybe not educational and not good for people's character. And there are lots of games like that, right? There are games I never let my children play. But there are also wonderful games that teach collaboration, cooperation, creative thinking, strategy. The great thing is that there are different games for different people. Look, as a publisher, I've probably published more than 200 games in my lifetime. Right? I am not proud of all 200 games, but that's the world we live in. Music, movies, books. They run. From wonderful to terrible. I mentioned my favorite game, Rocket League. That game is teams playing soccer with cars. I use Rocket League to stay in touch with my friends and to stay in touch with my son who lives in another city. It's a great tool for communication. And particularly these team-oriented games, they bring people together around the world. These eSports teams are international. It's not country versus country. It's team versus team. And I think if more people played video games together, I think there'd be a lot less war and a lot less hatred and a lot less racism in this world, because it teaches people to work together by playing together. Somebody asked, how can we get your feedback on a game we're developing? Please just send me any information you have. I'd be happy to help you out as a friend and a peer. And again, you can just get my email address through the Go Viral team and reach out to me directly if you want. There was a question above as well. What developers need to flourish, or like how to create favorable conditions so that we'll have more developers? You know, that's the hardest question. And I think I mentioned before that I did struggle with that. You know, when I visited Kazakhstan, not a lot of interest from the universities in developing that program. And I did not see a lot of interest from investors in supporting that kind of development. And that really disappointed me. So I don't know that there's an easy answer. I'm trying to build those conditions in a small way by coming to Kazakhstan, by speaking at events. I do think that as the current generation of gamers moves into more important positions of responsibility in companies, in universities, and around the world, it becomes easier to do. But it will take time. I think the best way is if we can have just a one globally successful hit game come out of Kazakhstan, then the whole world will focus on it. So that may be someone on this call today who makes the next super hit game. But I think that not only would help the economy of Kazakhstan and I think the cultural influence of Kazakh people around the world to have a hit game, but that will inspire other developers who see that success story. Someone asked on YouTube Live, what kind of games can you suggest for beginners in online games while a lot of us are under quarantine? I think a lot of it, first of all, depends on what device you have. You know, if you have a Nintendo Switch, of course, Animal Crossing. If you have a mobile phone, um, oh my goodness, there are just so many wonderful, so many wonderful games out there. I wouldn't know where to start. The great thing about mobile games is they're all free. I'm definitely a big fan of the Chinese MOBA called Honor of Kings. Uh, in Chinese, it's called Honor of Kings. It's from Tencent. In English, I can't remember the name of the game in English. Um, I love Rocket League, which is available on PC, on Switch, and on console. But it's a very hard game to learn, and I'm still not very good at it. But if I have to play one game for life, it's definitely Rocket League because it's easy to start but hard to master. It's a social game, and it's definitely not a violent game, right? It's just a fun sports game. So I hope I'll still be playing that game when I'm 70 or 80 years old. And someone's asking if I played a Plague Inc. No. In terms of games that, Plague Inc. is very popular now because it's a game about a disease that spreads around the world. There was a wonderful indie game called Revolution 1979. And it was created by a developer who grew up in Iran and is now living in the United States. And in the game, he tells you about what it was like to live through the revolution in Iran. And it's amazing because growing up in the United States, the education about the Iran Revolution is very much good guys and bad guys, black and white, good and evil. And, that's not what the real situation was. And the game really helps you understand how many complex forces were at play in Iran, why the revolution happened, and why it ended up the way that it did. And it really opened my eyes, not only to the facts, but the feelings. It puts me in the streets of Tehran, running away from the police. And, one of my friends is a communist. One of my friends is a, Islam extremist. I'm caught in the middle. And it's just this incredible story that I never learned in school. I never learned from the news, but playing the experience in the video game really gave me a deeper empathy and a deeper understanding. There's even a game an American couple made about their experience. They had a child who died of cancer. and the game puts you in the role of a parent of a sick child, and it's a heartbreaking game. Um, there's one part of the game where your baby is crying and it won't go to sleep, and you're just trying to calm it so it can sleep. And it just helps me understand what it's like to be in another world much better than any other movies can. So those are just some of my thoughts about games that have touched me and changed me and entertained me. And when I'm done with this call, I'm probably going to call my son in Seattle and play a couple rounds of Rocket League. We talk while we play. It's a great way to stay in touch. If anyone wants to connect with me on Steam, my Steam ID is Game Go Global. 3 words, Game Go Global. And I welcome you to connect with me on Steam. Okay,
there were a couple of people that asked your email directly, so I provided them. So please, yes, if you would like to share your projects with Mike, you are welcome. Otherwise, if you guys don't have any other questions, it's already almost 1 hour we're talking, and Mike is joining us actually from LA, 13-hour difference.
Almost midnight.
There is another question, I think, about mobile gaming.
About mobile gaming, am I using Apple Arcade? No, I feel so guilty. I have so many games I just don't have time to play. And some friends of mine have made games for Apple Arcade, and every month I say, okay, this is the week I'm going to play this game. Yeah, that Dragon Cancer, terrible and unique game. Yes, terrible in some ways, but wonderful in some ways too. But yes, the Apple Arcade is the idea where you pay one monthly fee, and then you can play all the games as much as you want. And they're not free to play games that are always trying to charge you, a little more money, a little more money. It's a great idea, but at the end of the day, I always just either want to jump into my VR headset or play one more round of Rocket League. I'll say this because we are running late on time. I do this because I want to see Kazakhstan become a powerful force in gaming, and I want to see some of these local Kazakh developers really become world famous and successful. Maybe you'll remember me when you do and invite me back to Kazakhstan sometime. But the talent that I see in your country, and the creative power and the energy and the love and deep understanding I see of video games is amazing. Kazakhstan has a very sophisticated, very well-educated video game playing audience, as good as any in the world. And I've seen the creative talent. I know the technical talent is there too. I'm sorry that the institutions around education and investment are not all they need to be. You're going to have to fight through those challenges, make your game successful, and then please, continue to be that leader and encourage and nurture and develop other young video game developers around you. So I'll wish you good night. Thank you for sharing my contact. Please, if any of you are working on games, let me know what you're doing. If I can make an introduction or give you some advice, I'm always happy to do it. Your success is my success.
Thank you again, Mike, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, as well, for all your questions and interest. We received really good feedback. Thank you all. All right, then we'll let you sleep.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
have a good night.
bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.